In this video, we are going to learn what are reinforcers, how to choose reinforcers, and how to use them. In a simple language, reinforcers are rewards. And what do rewards do? They motivate us. They motivate us to do something. For example, when someone is praised for their song or dance performance, this praise acts as a reward and motivates them to again repeat the song or dance. Hence, the praise acted as a reinforcer for future dancing or singing. Even the paycheck or the salary at the end of the month is a type of reinforcer which motivates us to work hard throughout the month. Every human being loves reinforcers. It is true for children too. It is true even for children who have neurodevelopmental disorders like autism. The first step is to identify a correct and a powerful reinforcer. But who do you think should choose the reinforcer? Not the parent or the teacher or the caregiver. It is always the child who should choose what should be the reinforcer. A child may not be able to tell you what he or she prefers, but if you know the child well or you inquire from the parents, they will be able to tell you that there are certain things which the child likes more than others. For example, a child might like to eat a certain type of food or like to drink a certain type of juice. Or if the child does not prefer eating or drinking that much, then maybe there is a certain activity which the child prefers more than others. That may be jumping on the trampoline or swinging on a swing or climbing a ladder, etc. What is important is to have a long list of strong reinforcers. There is a rationale behind this. For example, there is a child whose favorite reinforcer is a candy. But today, the child does not want to eat candy. Now, you cannot let the entire day go waste. So, you will have to fall back upon the second favorite, or the third favorite, or the fourth favorite reinforcer. So, maybe the child is not enjoying candy today, but maybe the child will enjoy trampoline, or a jumping rope, or maybe some other food item. Hence, it is very important to have a long list of strongly motivating reinforcers. The reinforcer should be small and controlled. Allow me to explain. For example, if the child loves to eat chips, but they are given an entire packet of chips to eat, so obviously, by the time they finish that packet, the child's tummy would be full and they will lose interest in eating chips. So the chip will no longer motivate them. So this is an example of how a reinforcer should be small. Maybe you could have used the same chip but by breaking into multiple small pieces. So you could use it over a longer period of time. Another important thing is that the reinforcer must be under your control. A child should not have unlimited access to the reinforcer without your permission or assistance. The child should see you as the provider of all good things. For example, if the child loves to jump on a trampoline, the access to the trampoline should be via you. The child should not be allowed to jump on the trampoline whenever he or she wants. Now, the next step is to choose the correct reinforcer. For example, in the initial few days or weeks of the therapy, it is best to use food or drinks as reinforcers? Because, as I have explained earlier, food or drinks can be broken down into smaller pieces, or a drink can be poured into smaller cups, and they can be used for a much longer duration of time. Also, such food and drinks are under your direct control, and the child will not likely have access to them unless you give permission to the child. Now, giving or using the child's favorite toy, even though it may be very reinforcing, but in the initial few days of therapy, it may be problematic. Let me explain. So, the child has done something, you have given the child's favorite toys to the child as reinforcer. The child is very happy and starts playing with it. But once you attempt to take back the toy, the child will resist. This will unnecessarily give rise to frustration and unpleasantness between the two of you. But some children are just not interested in food or drinks. In such children, use other reinforcers. Maybe they love to watch certain songs on YouTube or some other program, or maybe they enjoy some physical activity. If that is the case, even these can be used as reinforcers. For example, if the child loves to watch Cocomelon, you can use Cocomelon for a short duration of time, maybe 30 to 45 seconds, as a reinforcer. Another very important point is that you need to be very calm and gentle when you are taking back the reinforcer from the child. If you grab it or there is a tussle between you and the child when you're taking back the reinforcer, it will hamper your therapeutic relationship with the child. Remember, we want the child to see you as a giver of all good things so that he will be a happy and a willing learner when you get down to teach the child. Another important concept is pairing. Pairing simply means associating. You have to pair yourself and all the therapy related things of the child with the reinforcer so that the child is willing to learn. For example, you'll have to pair yourself, the room in which the child is going to work, the table on which the child is going to work and learn, and the therapy items which the child is going to use. All these things have to be paired with the reinforcers. Unless this pairing is done, you will find it is quite difficult to work with the child. You should start pairing yourself with the reinforcers. I'll give you an example. Let's imagine the child's favorite reinforcer is a chip. So in the initial couple of days, give a chip to the child without making any demands on the child. Just give a chip to the child and sit or stand nearby. Now, if the child does not accept the chip from your hand, then leave it on a plate near the child and you just sit or stand nearby. But it is important that the child should see you as a provider of that chip. Now, over a couple of trials or days, once the child is comfortable with your presence, the next thing is to pair your voice and touch with the reinforcer. For example, now as you are handing over the chip to the child, you may say, Ram, that is his name, Ram, have this chip. Over a period of time, the child will pair your voice with the availability of chip. Next, you can move on to pairing your touch with the availability of chip. You can say, Ram, have this chip, and simultaneously, gently touch his shoulders or his elbows and arms while you're giving the chip. The child has to be comfortable with your physical touch because this would be required later on in the therapy. So once the child is comfortable with your presence, with your voice, and with you touching his shoulders and arms and elbows, you can move on to pairing other things too. The next thing is to pair the workstation. For example, a table like this. Unless the workstation is paired with the reinforcer, the child will not willingly sit and learn. It may be a daily struggle otherwise. So what you can start doing is you can bring a workstation like this close to where the child is sitting, and you sit on a chair, leave the child's chair vacant, and you can place a chip on a plate on the table and call out to Ram, Ram, have this chip. Now, if the child is not coming to you, in the initial few days, it may be required that you bring the workstation close to, very close to where he is sitting, so you can just reach out and take the chip. If it happens successfully, over a couple of trials, you can move the workstation away from the child so that once you present the chip to the child and call out his name, he will travel the distance on his own and come and accept the chip. So hopefully in a few days or weeks, the child would be happily approaching the workstation and sitting quietly for a few minutes, tolerating your presence, your voice, and your touch over his back, elbow, and hands. Now is the time to introduce demands to the child. But be very careful to start with easy demands, because if you introduce tough demands too soon, the child may realize that the work is not worth the effort that he has to put in to get the reinforcements, and he may just stop working. Generally, when the demands are too high for the child may stop cooperating, or the child may display some aggression like hair pulling, or the child may exhibit some self-injurious behavior like head banging or pinching, or the child may use self-stimulatory behavior like finger twisting or hand flapping. This should make us realize that maybe the demands on the child are too high and we need to ease off. Another important point to remember is to fade off the reinforcements. Now, in the beginning, we were providing chip as a reinforcement without making any demands on the child, just to pair ourselves with the reinforcement. Now, as we start introducing our demands, we have to give reinforcement after every correct response. For example, if we have asked the child to touch your nose, after every correct response of touching your nose, we have to give the reinforcement to the child. But if the child is touching his nose, for example, 10 times continuously, now is the time to fade out the reinforcement so that the child response is not always dependent on the availability of reinforcement. How do we do that? Now you may give the chip to the child after every third correct response or every fifth correct response. Gradually stagger out the time before you give the reinforcements. It is very important that we reduce the dependency of the child on reinforcement. But the important piece of information is that do not be in too much of a hurry to fade out the reinforcement before the child has correctly learned the response. Otherwise, it may be detrimental to the entire therapy plan. Another important point to remember is to gradually move away from the food or drink based reinforcements to social and natural reinforcements. Like, once you have developed a bond with the child and the child is progressing in the therapy process over a period of weeks and months, you can stop using food or drinks as reinforcements and use natural reinforcements like clapping or a pat on the back or hug or cheers, which are not only more easy to provide to the child but is also like the real world scenario. Hopefully, by now, we have understood what are reinforcements, why are they important, and how to use them correctly.